Hola, my friends. Welcome to A Life I Choose, the place to be to design your life so you can thrive. For those of you who don't know me, hi, I'm Emma Hogg. I'm a psychotherapist and a lifestyle strategist, and I'm also the founder of the self-development agency, A Life I Choose. A Life I Choose is all about overcoming life's challenges and choosing your quality of life, no matter your circumstances. At the moment, our most pressing challenge is successfully adjusting to our rapidly changing world in response to the spread of coronavirus. And part of this challenge is how to continue raising joyful, life-loving kids in the midst of all of this. Now, I don't have kids yet, but I do have nieces who I'm very close to. And before beginning A Life I Choose, I used to work in schools. So I often think about how kids respond to different experiences, and I have a lot of empathy for parents who are navigating this uncharted territory. To address this, I've invited one of my favorite psychotherapists and most influential mentors to join me on the podcast today. Anna Fennick works with adults, adolescents, and young children. Anna had helped me to uncover just how impactful our childhood years are on the rest of our lives. And she taught me that healing from traumatic childhood experiences is absolutely possible with the right guidance. Our intention today is to discuss how best to support kids in adjusting to this situation, and hopefully as we discuss it, it will help you to process your own experience. Anna, thank you so much for joining me.
It's a pleasure to be here and to kind of offer whatever support from the bit of knowledge that I have or from my experience in helping. At the end of the day, I think to help children, we need to help each other as parents to make sense of it and to cope ourselves first. So I'm happy to be here and give from what I have.
Thank you.
And thank you for the invitation.
No, of course. I was really excited. I know one of the reasons that I wanted to speak to you is because, like, as this all started happening, I had no idea how to speak to my nieces about it. And like at first, we were still making sense of it. There were only a couple of cases in Malta, and okay, we understood we couldn't hug each other, and then it became, we couldn't be around each other, and so now we're video calling each other to talk. Like we baked on Zoom the other day, or every so often we talk. But I got really confused about it. Like how do we explain the situation to kids without freaking them out, without overburdening them? So I thought, if I'm having these questions, for sure lots of people are having these questions. So I wanted to have this conversation with you because you work with kids on a daily basis. You speak their language. You know how to communicate with kids well. So what do you think? How can we explain the situation to kids without scaring them?
I think first of all, it's not an easy situation to make sense of ourselves. So we are all experiencing this for the first time. It's not like we have the experience and the knowledge that, and then we pass on to our children. We're also trying to make sense of everything that's happening. So
yes.
First of all, my first support would be to tell all the parents out there who are struggling that it's normal to be struggling. It's so normal not to know how to deal with the situation, and it's okay. Because as parents, we tend to feel and to take a lot of responsibility and to feel like we need to have it together and to know it all for the sake of our children, so we can give them the best, and most protected experience possible. So I think firstly, I would say, let's kind of acknowledge that this is difficult for everybody. It's a first time for us all, including us as therapists, as you know, Emma. So, and then I think it depends on, so I think first of all, it's important that we kind of are at peace with this, or at least a little bit calm about the fact that we don't know everything. We might not know all the answers, and to kind of calm ourselves down first and to kind of function from that space of not knowing, and it's okay that I don't have all the answers.
Well, what I'm hearing you say is to kind of bring the self-compassion, like kind of, no, I don't have all the answers, and rather than get stressed about that, kind of stay with, this is confusing. This is a confusing time. I don't know how to respond, and that's okay.
At least, yes, to ourselves, we can say that, and sometimes even into the sometimes also to the children. I think we can start from that space of self-compassion, at least definitely with ourselves. And then we can, I think it depends on the age group. Okay, so with very young kids, it's we converse with them one way. With adolescents, we're going to discuss in another way. But I think the important thing is to wait for their question first and to give them a sense of safety, that we know within ourselves that we are safe with having to answer these questions, because children pick up on our kind of anxiety more than on anything else. So I think to be present in a way where we can offer the safety. So we need to see what we need to do first ourselves to come to that safe space. So what exercise we need to practice to, to come to that safe space, to acknowledge our emotions, to acknowledge our fear, and then to say, okay, and at the moment I am safe.
And is there a practice that you suggest with kind of staying with, for the parent to stay with their own emotion, or for the adult in general to stay with their own emotion and acknowledge where they are?
First and foremost, it's to acknowledge that we have our own fears, to acknowledge that this is a first time for all, and to acknowledge our own kind of not knowing how to deal with everything at the same time. So it's a learning experience for ourselves. So for us, I think to kind of come to this space of acceptance, of accepting the reality and this not knowing, and it's okay, I think brings a sense of calm. And if it doesn't, then we need to take another step and see, okay, so what gives me calm? What do I have control over? This is also about finding things we can be in control of. So what can I be in control of at the moment? At the moment, I know that I'm here with my family, we're safe enough. So to find ways to be in control, and then to present ourselves to the children from that place, because children need to feel grounded, that sense of safety, and they feel it through us. Like being on a plane. In case of emergency, you're asked to put on your oxygen mask first and then go to your kids. So this is the same way. We need to kind of find that breathing space and then go to the children. So
what I'm hearing you say is like staying with the present moment as it is, acknowledging the safety that there is. Like you said, we're safe at home. And you also mentioned the words, and I am safe. It's like to remind yourself that even though we can't control the virus, completely, but to acknowledge, that you are taking the precautions, and, that you are at home and you are with your children, and sort of acknowledging what is, and that this is enough for now.
And including the people out there. So knowing that the doctors, the authorities are doing the best they can. And we know so far that they have really been trying our best. So in a way that also gives us a sense of safety, because safety is within and from the outside. So to find the sense of control as much as we can, so that we come to the space of equilibrium, of balance. We will be shifting all the time from being scared when we hear new numbers going up. We're scared when we follow the news, when we see what's happening out there,
or when you go to the supermarket, or you receive a package at home.
Exactly. There are many moments when we are faced with this fear, and then it's about again coming back to this safe space, and at the moment I am safe. And usually, because our body tends to be very well equipped in case of emergency, this kind of sense of fight and flight, usually when we face a crisis, we're ready for it. So when a crisis arises, then our body automatically goes into this, like, what can I do to find ways of calming? It's not about always being in that calm state, because I think if we demand that of ourselves, we're demanding too much.
Yes, and then we lose it from the expectation being too high anyway.
Exactly, because it is too much to expect to be calm all the time, and to kind of be mirroring that to our children. I think if we show our children how we are managing our own anxiety,
they model that.
And we manage it. Exactly, we model that, and we give them permission to kind of be a little bit
human
and a little bit less in control till we find the control.
Yes.
you know.
Yeah. I really liked what you said earlier when you said, like, wait for the question from the
Yes.
child. So would you suggest kind of, rather than, sitting your kids down and saying, listen, this is what's happening, and we need to take these precautions, or maybe doing that and waiting for the question, like, what's your suggestion in explaining the situation?
I mean, I think parents have already had to do this with their children, because now we've been in this space for a number of weeks. So yes, I'm sure that many parents have sat down with their children and explained what's happening. And maybe in the beginning we kind of find some sense of fun and newness in it as well. Okay,
Yes.
let's see how we're going to cope, and we'll manage this, and this is what's happening.
There's some
And maybe
excitement around the novelty.
exactly. And we can still kind of bring that in. At the same time, children will have questions. Some will ask and some won't. So I think to create a space for it, so to start the conversation by sitting around a table, by creating a calm space, first of all, not having the news in the background or TV in the background, and there's a lot of information coming.
Yes, yes.
So to
yes.
create a space where we gather together and just check in with each other, because now we're beyond the beginning of this. So to keep checking in with each other, also not to assume that because we said something once that children don't have any more questions. So just to check in and see how they feel, and say how I feel, in a sense of saying, like, hey, I'm feeling calm at the moment, and sometimes I think of my parents or our grandparents, or how do you feel about this, or how do you feel about being inside, so we can ask the question
you sort of
in a way that it's very small, a very kind of small question. And sometimes children won't even know how they're feeling. If they're very young, they cannot process the emotion. So I think it also depends a lot on what age group. So we can say, sometimes I feel happy, sometimes I feel sad, sometimes I feel scared. How do you feel? And when I feel scared, I think of the fact that we are here and we are safe, and then I feel well again. So we kind of, in a way, lend them, when they're very young, it's like we lend them our ego, and we see how we cope, and we also tell them how we cope. It's not just about mirroring, because the children aren't with us all the time, and sometimes when we have our panic moments, we're not necessarily with the children.
They sort of need a bit of instruction as well, like for it to be made clear, like, when I do get scared, I do something nice for myself. Like for me, it's making a cup of tea, for example. Maybe for you, it's holding on to your teddy bear, or it's watching a nice cartoon, or it's coming for a cuddle.
And always to present the safety, that we are here safe together, that it's okay to feel scared and we are safe. So I think it's very important to acknowledge the emotion, to leave space for emotion. Maybe younger children will have more tantrums, will cry more, will act out more, but we need to make space for this. And not
we're probably doing that as adults too, no? That's what we're acting out more.
But sometimes we think that children function from where we function, and sometimes it's difficult for us to cope. Now with younger children, they don't even know how to process emotion. They don't even know the meaning of emotion. They don't even have a sense of time, let alone.
But they would still be picking up, no? Like, for example, a 2-year-old would not know what's going on, but would still pick up on the emotions going around, and obviously wouldn't necessarily know their emotions, but they pick up on the vibration, on the presence that the adults are there with.
Yes, and they do pick up our own energy, as you're saying, our own kind of emotions without knowing. Until the age of 2, most experiences are also implicit, so it's even more kind of unknowing for them. So for them to cry more, to be more kind of obnoxious maybe, and act out more, and throw things and react in that way is also normal. So I think to allow that space, and in that case of a young child, of a child that's young, it's to hold the child and to be calm and kind of breathe calmly with the child, to kind of mirror that breathing space, and then they pick up, and as we speak, Emma,
regulate.
Yes, I will also help out, because this is not a kind of it's a limited time. So I will also help out in a way by giving you some links to that
Perfect.
could
Thank
help
you.
parents to connect to read up, to feel supported,
Yeah.
because there is a lot of material out there. Sometimes we don't know what to choose, and I do my own research, and I think another thing with young children, kids who are 3 to 6 years old, I think social stories help a lot, because they tend to connect with the protagonist in the story, and they make sense through storytelling. So to find stories which I can also give you some links to,
Thank you.
help them understand how do you understand social distancing, how do you understand school not opening for so long, how do you understand not seeing your grandparents, how do you understand what the virus is itself, so to read stories to them, and then to see what comes out, to say, okay, what do you like from the story, or which part of the story do you want to go back to? To give them that space. I think children need space, and they just need to know that we give them permission to show us where they are. And for us, not to panic, because maybe we feel helpless, and that's okay. But for me to calm that it's okay to be in the situation, then that calming helps the child to calm down. And maybe not always, so we have to also be patient within our own frustrated moments, to make allowances for ourselves. I think it's very important as parents to make allowances for ourselves, to maybe not go through this in a very I have it all together kind of way,
Yes, I mean, I can see it from my relationship with Pete, like since this whole thing has been happening and we've been in social isolation, we've gone through periods when we've been much less patient with each other, found each other much more irritable. And we've sort of, something that I'm noticing is sort of we are reverting back to ways that we used to behave in childhood, which is normal when we're under stress. So kind of, I think kind of that allowance, because it could be that not only your kids are acting out, but you as a couple as well are acting out, and it could be that you have disagreements on how to handle it.
Exactly. That was another thing I wanted to mention, that as much as possible we need to be on the same page, because if I'm trying to kind of take a certain approach with my kids on how to take care, how to wash our hands, why it's important, how to kind of maybe keep certain spaces clean, and then one partner is diminishing all that and breaking the boundary, then we're giving mixed messages, then the children get confused. So it's important to discuss it in our own private space, and then to come to the kids as one united front, holding the space together, and that also creates more safety for the children.
What tips do you have for couples who are just not seeing eye to eye on how to handle this situation?
I think it's also about finding the time, which is not easy if you have young kids around, but to make time to explore it together and to listen, to practice active listening. Active listening is not just hearing what is being said. Active listening is about receiving what the other person is saying and mirroring back what I'm hearing, what I hear you say. So checking in with each other, what we hear each other say before we react or instead of reacting, and to try to find a common space where at least we can agree on what is important to bring forward to our family. And I think it's important to understand what is happening to me, because it could be that one of the parents could be overreacting, and one other parent is more practical and down to earth, or the other way around. So I think it's important that we check in and try to understand where we're coming from and what this means to us, and why I need this, and why I'm taking this approach, and to see kind of how it helps, that we kind of, how you being on my side will help me, and how for the other partner, if sometimes maybe one parent is being too much.
What if, for example, you have one parent who is, you know, adhering by the sort of the rules, the social isolation, and they're washing their hands and they're teaching the kids to wash their hands. And then you have another parent who is still going out into the world, still going to see their parents, is insisting on taking the kids to see their parents, or, things like this. And the couple is just completely at odds at this point in time. Do you have any suggestions for them?
I think if being at odds is going to create conflict, I think the children are going to pick up this conflict and feel unsafe, unclear. It's already a time that creates this kind of sense of threat to our safety. So I think to present an environment of conflict is going to create even more distress for the children, who are already perhaps a little bit unsafe within the situation. So I think it's important to take control, to see what they have control of, and maybe to, at that point, if they disagree, to agree that they disagree, and to find a way to choose what boundaries they're going to set, and why I need this and why I need that. But for sure, if we are in conflict around our children, and if we hold conflict within us, it's going to create a sense of unsafety for the children. So I would say find ways to go beyond yourselves, to come to the we space. Because we hold the space together as a we, not as a me.
To remember that in the long run, it's going to serve your family, yourselves and your family, much more to sort of put aside the defenses and whatever you're fighting for, and connect.
Yes. And also to allow space, in the conflict between us, to name what our feelings are, what our fears are. And I think once we name it, we can tame it, and we can help each other in that way. Because I think when a lot of the reactions come from a place of maybe being a little bit scared too. So overreactions can also come from a space of being, because I am afraid, then I react like this. So to help each other as a couple to find that sense of safety. As a couple, it's so supporting and so nurturing to be able to hold each other. So I think to find a way to come to this point of, at least if not holding each other, holding the space. And I think it's important for the children as well, that they see this holding and sense this holding. And sometimes it might take a while, and I think as time passes and as this crisis reaches its kind of middle space where we're in now, I think it becomes even more difficult. So also to leave room for conflict. And I think it's more about how we resolve the conflict than conflict itself.
Yes, because the conflict is going to happen.
It's inevitable, because we're in a state of threat, and the body is sensing that we're in fight or flight mode. We tend to go to that space. So to find ways of calming and coming together and always reaching the space, I think we come out stronger in the end, and it's a learning curve for us too. We also need to see where we need to flatten the curve, I think, within our own anxieties. I think we need to see that, because we spike. So how can I flatten my own curve? What rituals do I use? What do I need? So maybe it's helping each other, even as a couple, of stepping in for each other. I need some time out. I mean, I think we're doing so many roles. Suddenly we're at the same time, besides being parents, we're teachers, we're still working, we're trying to understand how we can help our parents if our parents are on the road. We still have parents. So there are a lot of roles at one go. So I think to find some way of self-care is very important. I think we all need to take care of ourselves, as a couple, to give that space to take care of ourselves. Even if we're disagreeing, I can still give you space to see what you need to come to that calm space. And I think then we function better and we communicate better from that calm space, because
I think sometimes even sort of choosing, just saying like, let's forgive each other, like let's start over. I think, sometimes when we get into this, you know, we're arguing back and forth and we're playing who's the bad guy, you know, like pointing fingers, and we're searching for an answer. We want somebody to own responsibility, but that's, you know, but not us. And I think that one of the most relieving things sometimes is just to drop it and to just say.
Yes, I think, Emma, at the time where we are in distress, whether it's a child or an adult, I think in times of distress, we need holding most. A child would need holding when they are in distress. So to isolate each other, whether it's our kids or our partners at a time when we are distressed, is the least we can do for each other. So I think to find ways to allow room for these big emotions and grief, and because there is a lot of grief, we have lost a lot in this process. We have lost our certainties, our safeties in different ways, our rituals, our daily rituals that in their own way give us safety. So I think the last thing we can do at this time is we are in isolation, but we don't isolate each other. It's very important to remain as connected as possible. Children need connection, adults need connection, and we need to find ways to work towards staying connected. It could mean I go to another room for a while and I come back. The important thing is to stay connected, because it's what creates the safety.
To remember the togetherness. I was listening to a podcast the other day with Esther Perel, and she was speaking about how in World War II, something that really helped families to get through it was remembering connection and valuing the love relationships and the friendships. And I think that this applies here as well.
Yes, and to use the connections we have. So to stay connected at home, to connect with friends, to connect with loved ones. Today we have a lot of platforms to do that.
We're so lucky.
Yes, today, whereas before we're saying, you know, we need to disconnect from technology to connect. Now it's totally reversed.
Yes,
technology
now we're using
has taken a totally different meaning. So now we need to connect to connect.
In a way, we're using it as it was originally intended, you know, like to help us to connect.
Yes, so to find ways to stay connected, also to make it exciting for the children. So even if maybe some children might be missing their birthday parties or missing occasions, so to find ways to do it anyway. We can still celebrate at home. We can still have people connected and create, maybe sing happy birthdays together. Maybe if you have a small Zoom party, find ways to, you know, to play statues, to play, to make a treasure hunt. So to find ways to be creative. I think with chaos comes creativity, and we need to see this as a potential and as a potential for creativity, because I think it's inevitable, and I think part of the resilience is tapping into this creativity, tapping into what can I use around me. So finding things that promote healing as well, thinking of all, there's a lot of pain around us, but there's also a lot of good. So even to teach, to kind of explore this with the children, to see all the helpers, to see how factories are changing from producing clothes to producing masks, how we reach out to each other, how you know,
you're shifting their focus from what there isn't to what there is, from lack to gratitude. In this way, you're teaching them resourcefulness. You're saying, okay, what can I make with what I do have, as opposed to I can't do this because I don't have this.
For sure. And I think that comes on you know, on many levels. And I think for a family, it could be a project in itself that we take onto ourselves. So what are we creating? And to give children space to draw, even if it comes to feelings. Sometimes maybe they can draw, they can tell stories, and they can make sense of it through their feelings. And it's something that we can hold on to. And today, with all these opportunities of even digital storing, what we do digitally, so we can easily create a kind of journal together of how we survived this time. So getting children to draw, to paint, to take pictures, to just journal our journey. And maybe today it will be something we're just doing together. But when the time will come where we'll look back at this time, it would be very interesting to, and I think touching, to see how we cope. So to create a sense
you'll have a sort of almost like a journal of resilience.
Yes, and exactly. And I think at the end of it, when we look back, we will see that these things did help us to cope and to cope well. As I said, I think finding creative ways of coping is also a way of building resilience. And like you said, what do we have? What do I have that I can use to help me? So it could be a thought, and it could be something that I do. It could be a ritual. You know, I think these are times where we create the extraordinary in these ordinary ways in our ordinary life, you know, because now it's no ordinary time. So it's no ordinary time. So it's also extraordinary out of the ordinary, but we can make something extraordinary from it. So even something simple, sometimes for me, it's just the luxury of sipping a warm cup of tea and knowing that I poured it through a teapot that my kids gave me, and my kids are not around at the moment. So it brings that connection and warmth. So we need to find rituals, and we need to create new. We can find new meaning in rituals that we've taken so much for granted. I think this is a lot about how we create meaning out of all this that's happening. So I think to name it, to shape it, to give it a new form, to storytelling, to coming together, to playing games, to taking pictures, and through putting it together in a way that we can look back. I think even from one week to another we can look back. And I've started this journaling with some friends of mine, where we do photo journaling, you know. So and 3 weeks into this process, we see so much that we've shared, because in a time of crisis the brain doesn't hold on to a lot of information. We're very much in the immediate, and if in the immediate the crisis is long, then we kind of tend to be in crisis for a long time. So to play back what we've lived through the week and come in touch again with that sense of hope, that sense of support, that sense of holding, whether it's within my family or with our friends, I think can be a very heartwarming and touching experience, as well as nurturing and building strength. And I think this is the time to build resilience, Emma. In the first weeks, we were still finding our ground, but it was the beginning, and
processing,
creating new spaces in whatever, however stressful the situation was. But now I think is the time where we're stretching it. We need to stretch this time of being isolated, respecting the social distancing. And I think this becomes more difficult as the time passes. So I think this is the time to become even more creative, to use art. In a way. Or creativity. It doesn't have to be, it could be baking, it could be pottery, it could be not pottery, but doing things with Play-Doh, building and finding time to laugh together and to cry together if we need, you know, but to play. And I think for children especially, it's very helpful. And I think it's a time for adults to come back in touch with play. I think along the years, we forget how to play and how to be artful. I think one of the quotes that has touched me as I've been training in many different ways, one of my fields is in using the expressive arts in therapy, is what Picasso said, that kind of we are all born artists, we just lose it as we go along. And I think as adults, we put a lot of limitations onto ourselves because of our expectations. So I think to find ways to play,
there's a good opportunity in a way it's a good opportunity for our kids to bring us back and to teach us.
Yes, also, that's very important, to be open to learn from them. And I think that gives them a sense of mastering and a sense of
empowerment,
efficacy that I can also teach my parents, and they can learn through me. So they give them a sense of kind of, I can do this, I can teach too. So it's mastering a situation. I think these are the important little moments. And we have many moments in a day. And we have many chances in a day. When we slip, we pick ourselves up again. It's not about
doing it
failing
perfectly.
or doing it perfectly. It's about having the courage to pick ourselves up again.
Yeah, that is what resilience
that
is.
is the most, exactly. And
Resilience
now is the
isn't,
time to be.
yeah.
And I think children, I think this is a great time for children to learn these skills, which maybe because of the fast life we were living, didn't have chance to,
Yes.
to experience and to grow from.
I agree.
I think children are still even more challenged to learn how to wait, to learn how to be sensitive, to learn how to give, to learn how to listen, to learn how to, have kind of be a team at home. They were learning it at school. Now is the time for them to learn it at home. But I think with adolescents, it's a time of learning critical thinking. How do I break it down? How do I think outside the box? So it's a time to be close to them and teach them many skills. I know that school has come to the home.
Mm-hmm.
And here one thing I wish to say is that I don't really see this as homeschooling. I see this as school has been brought to the home, which is different to homeschooling, because when you homeschool, usually your child is away from school and you're teaching it, and maybe a lot of homeschooling includes going out and so on. So I think parents
you set yourself up for it. It's not
exactly, but you're away from school, so this is more like learning in a new situation and in a crisis situation, because I think again we put a lot of pressure on ourselves as parents. We have not studied how to teach, so it's not our fault if we don't manage, and it's not the child's fault. And I've seen some like these memes going around of kind of with as much as I respect teachers and I've worked in a school and I know how hard they work, I've seen this going around saying like, now we can understand that the problem was not the teacher. And I find that quite upsetting, because if a child is not understanding, this is not about the child not being able to grasp. This is about being in a new situation and needing to find ways to make sense of what I can learn. So even to, as parents, understand that this is a difficult time to be learning and to be taking in information. Some children might be really having fun learning in these new ways. Some children might be struggling, and we need to give them, the ones who are struggling, space to see what they can take control of, to see what areas they can learn in, because this is not an easy situation I think for many children. So I think we need to create these new kind of grounds for learning, and I think learning can be on so many levels. And I think if our children can learn resilience and can learn how to manage and how to kind of even have chances to kind of maybe even lead in this crisis by taking certain decisions and certain roles in the family. I think these are the skills of the 21st century anyway. And I think this is what will make them thrive.
I think things like involving them kind of with decisions about what shall we eat today, and who's going to cook this, and who's going to...
What can they do? What can they be in control of? Can they take leadership in? I'm going to be the one, even if it's in simple things of laying the table. This is my role, or who's going to set up this schedule for the day, or whatever. But we can. There's so much room for learning, and so let's not limit ourselves to only being in a crisis. To see if there is health and if we are safe, then let's also make it a learning experience. As we embrace the pains and the losses, let's also make it a learning experience. I think this is a time where we need to acknowledge that we have losses, and it's also a time where there is potential, and we need to embrace the situation with determination and compassion and self-compassion and hope and courage, and also leave room for grief and fear and uncertainty. And all these elements can coexist.
And absolutely.
We also need to acknowledge that we shift from the space of not knowing to the space of calming, you know. And in that time we always find, okay, so what can I take control of at the moment that will help me? What do I need to tell myself at the moment? What do I need to reframe at the moment? Because if at the moment I'm telling myself I need to be, you know, so zen and so in control, I think we need to reframe the question rather than, or the statement rather than, than actually.
How can I?
Yes.
Like, how can I calm myself down? Or rather than I need to be zen. Do I really? Do I always?
No, is it possible to be? It's impossible in a time of crisis. It's not even possible and almost healthy to be totally zen, because we need to be a little bit vigilant. If something is happening and I say, oh, that's okay, I'm totally zen, and suddenly I'm going to be run over by a car. You know, we need to act. So we need to be vigilant about what's happening, or rather aware, more than vigilant, aware of what's happening and what steps we need to take to intervene, because things are changing fast as well. So we're all not so prepared maybe. And then we need to find these moments where we are in control. So kind of we need to stay with the shifting and find what we need to come to that sense of balance. And I think the most important thing is creating the safety first.
Yes, and this is how I would like to close this podcast. This is what really is staying with me from our whole conversation. It's the safety, it's the compassion, the togetherness, and the patience and acceptance for things to be imperfect and challenging, and that's okay.
Yes, and to make space for all this, you know, for all this uncertainty, and to see it also as an opportunity to create something new together.
I love that.
I will send some links that could help with social stories and with
Thank you.
other perhaps information. Thank you, Emma. It was a pleasure to be with you and to explore this. And I mean, I have no perfect answers, and I'm glad if anyone could pick up at least one thing that helps, then I would be happy, and I'm more than happy to return. So thank you, Emma, for the opportunity to give.
Thank you for being here. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this podcast and that you found it helpful. If you did, please do subscribe for more episodes, and remember to share with your friends and the people you love. All the links that Anna mentioned are in the podcast description. So go over there to find the social stories. We wish you love, we wish you joy, health, and peace, and we'll speak to you again soon. Take care.